Hello, and welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Club. I am one of your hosts, Sheena White.
And I'm your other host, Jerry Garcia.
And today we're going to talk about pricing. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, we're going to expand on a conversation we had on the previous episode. We talked a little bit about, not making buying decisions for your clients and, your pricing and why it is where it is and getting behind that in your own mind.
Yeah. So I think pricing is something, it's an interesting thing, especially when you have what I like to call intangible products. But even tangible products, this happens a lot. People have a lot of emotion and kind of like mental baggage when it comes to their pricing. And I think a lot of it has to do with, we all have a money story, right? Of how we grew up. If, we grew up where we had tons of money, then maybe we don't see it as a big deal. But if we had little, then we want to keep our prices low because we want to be accessible. There's a million different stories we tell ourselves about money, but those stories end up being reflected in our pricing.
Yeah, and I think for many people, those stories, lead you to feel like you can't charge a certain amount or nobody will pay this price or, and I think it happens a lot with businesses who are first starting out. Mm-hmm. They really, want to be the best price in the market, and that's how they're going to gain business, right? That's how they're going to gain market share, is by being the cheapest. And over time, that's just not sustainable. And then they feel like when they have to raise their prices, oh, well, now I'm selling out. Now I'm not serving the people that I was meant to serve, or that I thought I was going to be serving, whether it's people I grew up with, people from my neighborhood. Now they can't afford my service. And 90% of this is all inside our mm-hmm. heads.
Yeah. I mean, and I had a client once and we were talking about pricing. This is when I first started with him, and I was like, okay, how do you determine what to charge someone? And he said, well, I call my buddy who does similar work, and I ask him what he would charge. I'm like, okay. And he's like, and that's what I charge. And I'm like, but your buddy has different overhead, has different, clients, has your buddy hasn't seen the project. So what if, different supplier relationships. What if your buddy, what if you forgot to mention something and, and that would be expensive? How is that a pricing structure? I talk about this story all the time because it is my most ridiculous pricing.
And it's not that far off, I think, from being common, maybe they don't call their buddy, but maybe they do price based off of their competitors mm-hmm. and only factoring in that I want to be competitive with them, so I need to price competitively with them.
Well, I think, okay, so, and I'm not saying don't do competitive analysis. When I'm working with clients and we're, trying to decide if we want to go into a new sector of whatever business they're in, I will do a ton of competitive analysis to see where the market lies, right? Knowing your market is different than pricing based upon your buddy, Right. You have to price based upon how much does it cost you? What are your costs of goods sold, right? How much is this actually costing you to produce? What is your overhead? Because your overhead in your business is going to be completely unique to you. Nobody else has your same rent, has your same insurance, has your same, loans that you have to pay every month, your same debt servicing. All those things are unique to you. You made those decisions, and so your overhead is yours. Nobody else has the same staff that you do and the same prices, all the things. So all of that needs to be worked in to your pricing so that you can, pay your cost of goods sold. You can pay your overhead and still pay yourself profit. That's the analysis you need to do to create the pricing. And if you feel like it's too high and it's outside of market tolerance, well, then you need to do some shifting in your costs. But let's say it is within market tolerance, but maybe it's on the higher end. But you're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get people to pay that. Well, why not?
Right. I mean, luxury items, luxury brands, if you're serving the right people, maybe, you like to only do these very, high-end jobs. And the high-end jobs aren't going to probably profit you as much per hour because they're going to take a lot more effort. They're going to take a lot higher material costs. But you're not going to do a lot of these jobs per year, not as many as you do if you're doing standard run-of-the-mill type of work. But if that's what's fulfilling for you and that's the business that you're running, doing that quality of work, doing it the pricing that you want is going to work. I mean, for some reason, this reminds me of Relentless, the book, Tim Grover. And he's, if you don't know the book, Tim Grover was a personal trainer for Michael Jordan. And that was literally his first client. I mean, the guy literally went to school, studied sports medicine, did all this stuff. And he's like, I want to work with the best. He sent a letter to the Chicago Bulls. I think he lived in Chicago at the time. Sent it to all of the Chicago Bulls except for Michael Jordan because he thought there was no way Michael Jordan would work with him. And lo and behold, Michael Jordan sees one of these letters, advertisements for himself, and he calls the guy, and they talk, and Michael Jordan ends up hiring him and gives him a lot of credit for kind of pushing him and helping him with his specific needs. And that's just an example of, Tim Grover almost sold himself short and didn't work with Michael Jordan because he didn't go for it, even though that's the clientele he was really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was looking at NBA players in general, but realistically, he wanted to work. He only works with the best of the best. He worked with Kobe Bryant. He worked with Michael Jordan. He's worked with lots of NBA
Dwayne
players.
Wade, I think.
Dwayne Wade he worked with, yep. And he's helped a lot of these guys. He helped them through major injuries with changing things in their game so they can be more sustainable, and they use that little bit to get better and better. Point being is the pricing is the same way. You're pricing for the market you want to serve. If you want to do, that run-of-the-mill stuff is really high margin, really quick, very easy to estimate, very easy to get in, get out, get done quickly. But if that's not what your business serves, then don't worry about the pricing. If you're building a backyard space for Michael Jordan, it's going to look a lot differently than if you're building a backyard space for Mr. and Mrs. Jones down the street who just want a very basic deck where they can put their barbecue grill.
Yeah, and I mean, and then, and Mr. and Mrs. Jones down the street are probably not calling Michael Jordan's backyard designer because they think they can't afford it. And that's okay. I always use retail establishments when I'm talking to clients about this because I'm like, okay, are you trying to be Walmart? Are you trying to be Target? Are you trying to be Nordstrom? Are you trying to be Saks Fifth Avenue? These are all different price points. And I know, I was shopping this last weekend with a client and a friend, and we were at Nordstrom's first, and we didn't really find some stuff. We went to Neiman's, and we were just like, okay, neither of us is spending $3,000 on a jacket. I don't know what we're doing here, and so it was like, but we knew going into these places, the price points, and then a couple of them were like, look, that's, it's very brown, and we know it's outside of the price range we're willing to spend today, so we're not even going to go in those stores because there's no point because we aren't going to shop there. And so just knowing who you serve, right? But those stores were super busy. There was one actually that we went into because we never heard of it, and it was very expensive and it was very crowded. So don't ever think that you're too expensive for the correct buyer.
Right. And that's it. It's for the correct buyer. And we've talked, in the past about, your target audience and knowing who that is and knowing what your niche is. And not every service company works exactly the same and serves exactly the same clients.
Yeah.
And sometimes those other, what a lot of people would see as competitors can be your best referral partners because you provide a service that they really don't specialize in, even though it might seem the same, right? You might have a concrete company that pours concrete and another one who does prep work. And those are two different services that can be provided by two different providers. And one may get a lot of requests for it, but that's just not what they do. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the skilled labor to do it. And so they just say, hey, look, we'll refer this over to them. You get concrete pour work, you refer it back to us. And that can be a really good symbiotic relationship if you're willing to just trust what you are doing and what you want to do and pricing it accordingly.
Yeah, just decide who you, and that's why, I think we will talk about this ad nauseum. That's why you need to decide who is your ideal client. Who are you serving? Because that will also help you determine your pricing, where you need to live in terms of the pricing. And I've seen people who didn't get business because they were actually too cheap. Because people, when you're too cheap, they think it's not any good.
I've not purchased things because they were too cheap. I said that can't be any good for that price. So
Yeah.
let's just look somewhere else, especially when we're talking, mentorship, coaching, things like that. There are programs that we passed on because it's just like, that seems too good to be true.
Yeah. Like, I don't think they obviously either don't know what they're talking about, or it's not going to be as robust as they say it's going to be. It can't be both for that price, which we could be completely wrong. I don't know, but we'll never know because we didn't buy it. Yeah, I mean, and I see this with so many different things, It's like even with, like fast fashion and stuff like that. Everybody knows if you buy like a $5 t-shirt, it's probably, I see people like, it only lasted 3 washes. I'm like, it was a $5 t-shirt. Like what were you really expecting for $5? Let's be real here, but you have to be honest with that. Like, what are you expecting? And then what expectation are you leading your clients to believe about you with your pricing?
Yeah, and that's the story you're telling, right? If you are pricing on the higher end, then you're telling your clients that you're a higher end service and a higher end brand that's going to do a top of the line job. And maybe they don't need that right now, but maybe they're planning in the next couple of years to buy their dream home, and they don't want the run of the mill, tile work done. They want the highest quality because this is going to be their dream house. They want it to be their forever home. They want it to look as great as it can. They have a vision, and they're going to think of you who can implement that job because you've priced yourself and sold yourself accordingly, rather than thinking of the guy who they had to come do some patchwork in their shower for this particular house before they, put it on the market.
Yeah. Because people buy not based upon price, but based upon perceived value. And I say perceived value because there's actually been a huge kind of like ruckus in the designer goods arena lately because I guess quality has gone way down. I've never really been a huge, other than some shoes, I've never really been a huge designer goods fan, but lots of people are, and supposedly the quality is just not where it used to be. But some of these companies are still having like record-setting sales, even though the quality has diminished because the perceived quality is still there and the perceived value is still there. So it's all about perception, not reality. So you have to build that perception and that expectation and then deliver on it to your client.
Yep, and so don't let your own hangups on what you think is too expensive, what you think is not, nobody will pay.
Yeah.
Don't ever let that dictate how you're selling it, because if you know the value you're bringing, you know what it costs to do these jobs, to do them well. If you know what it costs to have the appropriate labor, the right skilled people in those places to make these jobs as high quality as you want them to be, then don't worry about pricing it crazy. I mean, like you said, do your market analysis, make sure that you're not way out of line with your pricing, but don't let that be your number one factor.
Yeah.
And there's just so many Walmarts out there, right? There's so many people who just price. They're going to always sell on price. And eventually, if you don't want to compete against them if you're trying to do something higher end. Now, if you do want to do that, you can have two sides of your business also, right? You can have your guys that do your everyday work.
But I mean, even then you're still selling on value.
Right.
At the end of the day, you always want to sell on value, right? Even price. So like, okay, when I first started in corporate sales, I sold toilet paper. Okay, yeah, for real. I sold toilet paper. It was janitorial, towel and tissue, lots of janitorial supplies. But the point is, toilet paper. There is no greater commodity than TP, right? And people would sell it, and they would try to, like, my competitors would try to undercut me by like 5 cents a case. And if you're selling on price, then I always say if you sell on price, you lose on price, because your competitor can just undercut you by 5 cents a case, and then you're out. When you sell on value, what are you giving the client? You can keep that even though the price can be less. And my clients, that was one of the hugest things I did, was selling on value. I was trying to give them solutions, not just products, because anybody can give them a case of TP. But on a Friday, if they call me because they forgot to put in their order Thursday night and they're going to run out of TP over the weekend, and I fill up my entire car and haul it to them directly. Yeah, totally did this. I'm going to keep that client, okay? Because that's value that 5 cents a case ain't going to ever bring back them having the TP for the weekend.
Having a hotel that runs out of TP is never going to be worth the 5 cents per case that they paid less.
Yeah, can you imagine going to? Yeah, it would be really bad. But my point is, like, you have to focus on the value. And even if your value, because even Walmart talks about big value. They use the word value everywhere.
Great value is their brand.
Yes, great value is their brand, right? Why do they choose that name? Because even though it's cheap, the whole point is it's great value. So it's supposed to be better for a less price. That's their point. But they're still focusing on value, even though they are a low-cost provider.
We're talking about like Shein and Temu, right? Like you have certain expectations. I literally had a friend who posted on Facebook earlier today about some pants that she had found, and she was modeling, and she's like, I love these. They're very 90s style. You know, I got them from Temu for like $30, so they may last 3 washes, but I'm going to enjoy the heck out of them while I have them.
Yeah, right? I got my 3 wash. It's like your $5 t-shirt, right? But the thing is, it's like, what is the value? I mean, $5 for 3 wears, maybe that is a good value for someone. They only need it for a couple things. Like for me, especially like Halloween costumes, I feel like Halloween costumes are the most valueless thing ever because you're wearing like 1 or 2 times is like $85 freaking dollars, like for real. So somebody bring out a low cost value provider for Halloween costumes, okay?
It's called buying your Halloween costumes in the winter when they're not.
Yeah, but the children always want something different in the winter.
I know.
Anyways, so create that value and really price for your consumer, your ideal client, not yourself. So just like we said last time, make it easy for your client and not yourself. Do the pricing, price for your client and what they want, what they expect, not you, because you're not your client.
Yeah, and you have to sell yourself on that idea. If you're anything like me, I'm a great salesperson when I believe in the value of whatever I'm selling, and I'm a terrible salesperson when I don't. Because if I think it's there, I'm not really selling you. I'm just telling you everything that's great about this and why you need it, and you're selling yourself on the cost. Mm-hmm. When I don't believe it's really there, at Circuit City, I used to work at Circuit City when I was younger. It's a great example. I was great at selling people all the stuff I thought that they needed for whatever they were looking for. I was terrible at selling the extended value or the extended warranty type things because it was BS. Like, you know, I'd say unless, you know, on speakers, sometimes I'd say on speakers, hey, look, this is for 2 years. It covers blown speakers. If you tell me, you know, in a year, 9 months, you go blow these out so you can come back and get a new pair, then it's worth it. And they're like, really? Like, if you know how to do that and you want to do it, absolutely. Buy it, spend, you know, an extra $20 per speaker, and then in a year and a half, make sure that you blow these things out and bring them back, and we'll give you a brand new pair.
And now we know why Circuit City is no longer. No, I'm just kidding.
But that was it. And, you know, one of the things that one of my last, you know, I got laid off from Circuit City when they started having their massive layoffs before they went under.
He was the reason. I'm kidding.
But I had sold the week, my last weekend there was a holiday weekend. It was Memorial Day weekend. I had sold these 3 massive sound systems to 3 different people. Was one of the top salespeople in the store for that weekend, and I was competing against guys selling these large, you know, home entertainment systems, computers, all that. And I worked in car audio. Anyway, you know, one of these guys I sold a bunch of systems to. Ironically enough, my brother came to work that day. It was his first day the same day that I got laid off. And so he was there the next weekend when the guy came back to get everything installed in his car, and he asked where I was, and my brother told him they laid me off. And the guy almost returned everything. He was like, look, man, like, I've been looking. I didn't care how much I was going to spend. I was just looking for somebody who was going to tell me what I needed and exactly what I wanted. And so he didn't care. The price to him was not of any consequence. It was finding the right person to sell it to him appropriately, so he knew what he was getting was going to be exactly what he wanted. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, he almost returned it just because they laid me off, and he was pissed off for me. But that kind of goes to show you that for some people, the price is not the most important thing. And that's actually true for way more of the consumers than you think, because people are trying to buy what they want. They want the solution, and if the solution fills their needs, then the value is there for them to pay.
Yeah. I heard something that said that people don't buy products, they buy solutions. And I feel like that's totally true. And I always say that people will find the money to buy what they want to buy. If price was the issue, then there would not be luxury anything, because no one would buy it because it would be too expensive.
Right.
But you see a whole bunch of people out there who really, quote unquote, can't afford luxury items, who are still buying them and still wearing them and still doing the thing, because they will find the money for what they want.
And even some of these luxury brands that aren't even great. I mean, you look at Range Rover has some of the poorest performance reviews of any car model, and yet it's still considered high end, and people will still buy it so they can be seen in their Range Rover for the 2 months that it works. Before they have to
2
go,
months, you're being so kind.
before they have to go get it repaired.
Yeah.
So, the value, it's perceived value. You make that value for that person, whether you're selling yourself as a luxury brand, whether you're selling yourself as, that middle ground between the lowest quality and the high end, whatever it is, price appropriately, sell to those people who are going to buy that, and they'll come.
Exactly. Yeah. Figure out your ideal client, create that value, then price accordingly and sell like hell.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Blue Collar Wealth Club. We'll catch you next time.